is our monthly new partner introduction. Um, so this is something we put together for all of the new partners that have recently signed up, new employees and old partners that need to get familiar with Zyxel, or just those of you looking for sort of a refresher on what Zyxel offers. The idea behind today's webinar is to sort of go through all of our key product offerings, show you what we have available, because we often run into situations where we go out and visit a partner, run into them at a trade show back when those existed, and people would be surprised, hey, you have this, hey, you have that. We didn't realize it. We were only buying your switches, or we were only buying your access points. So today we'll go through all of our key channel focused products, give you sort of a high level overview. Some of this stuff we're going to be going through it pretty fast. Feel free to ask questions using the question and answer interface in the Zoom there, and I may answer them as we go through. I may hold off and wait till the end, depending on how things are going. But that's how you'd go ahead and ask questions. And just take notes. So if there's anything in there that we talk about today that you'd like to learn more about, reach out to your salesperson, David or Jacob, let them know, and they can get you more information about that and ask you questions. And if you need a training on certain products, we can organize a training for you as well. So let's get started here. So this is a brief background on who we are. So we've been at this for more than 30 years making networking products. We've got over 100 million devices deployed out in the field. We serve 150 different global markets. Now, the North American office is located in Anaheim, California. Give me just a second here. Is located in Anaheim, California. So that is our warehouse. That is sales. That is our tech support. So when you call in for tech support, you are contacting somebody who works here at Zyxel. At the moment, most of us are working from home still, but our headquarters is here in Anaheim, and all of our employees are based out of this Southern California area. So if you're here, it's because you are a member of our partner program. So just wanted to highlight some things here for you. Just remember that when you're buying through distribution, you do get additional discounts as a partner. So be sure we know who you're buying from and what your account is, so we can get that set up for you if we haven't already. Most of our channel products come with a lifetime warranty. As a partner, you get access to deal registration. So if you get a deal, you can be the first one to lock it in and get exclusive discounts for whoever is the first one to bring that business to us. You get priority access to our tech support line, and you get access to things like today's webinar and training. So for the channel side of the business, this is how we split up our products. We've got our security appliances, wireless solutions, switches, gateway and access solutions, and our network management products. So we're going to start by talking about probably our biggest network management product, which is Nebula. So for those of you that haven't been paying attention, Nebula is getting a pretty big facelift change coming up here this coming Sunday/Monday. So just be aware that there are some changes. I've put on a couple webinars on it. Tri has an upcoming Nebula Together webinar. So if you weren't familiar with these changes or you'd like to learn more, join that Nebula Together webinar. So the idea behind Nebula is to simplify things so it takes less time to do stuff. So you have to buy less equipment and spend less time configuring that equipment. So saving you time and money together. So this is just showing here, that was the previous slide was showing you what goes into, setting up a network. So one of the things we do here for you with Nebula is we make installation a lot quicker. There's no configuration that needs to be done on a per device basis locally. You don't need any monitoring equipment. That's all handled by the cloud monitoring functionality. You don't need to set up remote access to your customer locations. That's all done automatically through the cloud. Our platform itself is the monitoring platform for you. Logs are stored automatically in the cloud, so you don't need to set up separate storage for that. Firmware updates, configuration changes are all done over the air, so you don't need to worry about that. And we have the ability to use your existing user authentication methods such as Radius, or you can use our cloud-based management server as well. So Nebula Gives you the ability to set up without unboxing. And what we mean by that is basically at any point you can go to nebula.zyxel.com and start setting up your customer. Before you've even finalized which hardware you're going to purchase, you can start setting up some of the core basics of your customer's network. When you do order the product and it gets shipped to you, you will find there are QR codes on the outside of the box, as well as on the hardware inside. You simply scan those QR codes, assign it to your customer and which site, if your customer has multiple sites, it's going to. And that's all you need to do. From that point on, all you need to do is plug it in. It will boot up. It will reach out to the internet. It will see who it's supposed to be or who it's been assigned to, and it'll automatically update its firmware and download the configuration that you've assigned to that customer. So it's very, very simple, very quick getting things up and running. In some cases, you can simply have the hardware after you've scanned it shipped directly to your customer. You don't need to send a tech on site, especially if you're doing like a hardware replacement or swap for an upgrade or a defective device replacement. So Nebula, the client is built into the Nebula hardware itself, so there is nothing additional you need. So there's no software that you need to run, there's no servers you need to set up, there's no physical devices you need to plug into the network for remote access or for monitoring. It's all done directly through the cloud. And anywhere you've got internet access, you have access to all of your customers. You simply log into our website or open the app on your mobile device, and you'll be able to see what's going on your customers' networks. Nebula has easy guest access. So whether you're providing guest access at an office or whether you're providing guest access at a small hotel or a coffee shop, we have that functionality baked in from the get-go with Nebula. Everything is done over the air, so configuration changes are pushed out automatically. We have some intelligence that goes into that to make sure when we're pushing out configuration changes, they're done in such an order that you don't accidentally lose access to some of your devices. And firmware updates are also pushed out over the air, and that's something you can help schedule. On the security side of things, we make VPNs really easy. If you're doing site-to-site VPN, you simply go in, select the Nebula gateways at each of those locations, and then just basically assign which sort of topology you want for those VPNs. Hub and spoke or star, hit apply. We take care of everything else. For users who are remoting in from home or from the road, we have the ability to use scripts to automatically configure the VPN on the customer devices. So that works with Macintosh, iOS, and Windows. So Nebula makes it easy for you basically to manage all of your customers. It's been designed from the ground up to let you manage and see all of your customers, all of their sites, all of their devices through a single pane of glass. Simply log in and they're there. When you log into a customer's site, this is the view you see here. This is our dashboard. Many of these widgets up here on the top, these are customizable, but you can see it gives you a quick snapshot of what's going on the network. You can see things on here such as PoE usage versus the available PoE budget on your switches, how many users are currently on the wireless network, which applications are using bandwidth, which users are using your bandwidth, etc. So everything I've talked about with Nebula is free. So you don't have to have a subscription to use Nebula. The core functionality and access to the core functionality of your devices is available for free. There's no limits to the number of devices or number of customers you can manage with a free version of Nebula. We do offer, coming up this next Monday, we'll have 2 other tiers that you can purchase licenses for, a plus tier and a pro tier, which unlock additional features such as more admin accounts, storing log information in the cloud for a longer period of time, increasing the number of entries in the cloud database if you want to use our database for user authentication, um, sending out reports with your company's branding on them, things like that. So not required, and there's always the free version to drop back to. Now, when you're looking at our price list or you're looking at our products, you will see products described as Nebula Flex or Nebula Flex Pro. So if you see a device labeled as Nebula Flex, basically it's telling you that device can either be worked in the traditional standalone management where you go into the CLI or you go into the device's web GUI to configure it or use SNMP, or you can switch it over and manage it through the Nebula cloud. If you see something that says Nebula Flex Pro, It's telling you that you've got a bundled 1 year of the Pro Pack license. So that's that enhanced license comes bundled with that device. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. And in the case of wireless access points, it also tells you, in addition to being able to manage those access points standalone or with Nebula, you could also manage them with a local controller. So for those of you that don't want it in the cloud, but you've got a lot of access points, Nebula Flex Pro devices can be managed with a controller. So moving on from Nebula here, let's talk a little bit about our security products. This is probably where we have the most interest, the most confusion, and the biggest sales here. So we'll start off with our products now have been continuously certified by ICSA Labs for the last 20 years. So ICSA Labs is a third-party certification company that basically certifies and tests um, network firewalls, VPNs, things like that. So we have been certified now by them for 20 years running. When it comes to our UTM services, we do it a little bit differently than most of our competition. Most of our competition is trying to handle content filtering in-house, antivirus in-house, IDP in-house. We don't do that. We're a hardware company, we're a networking company. So instead, what we've done is we've partnered with some of the bigger names in the industry to provide those services for us. So when you're using our security gateways with UTM functionality, you're getting services provided by McAfee, Trend Micro, Bitdefender, etc. So we've got several different lines of security appliances. These features I'm going to go over here are pretty universal across the different models and the different lines. So VPN high availability, the ability to load balance your WAN connection, the ability to use multiple WAN ports, virtual tunnel interfaces so you can trunk VPN connections together. Our Ssl Vpn Extender. So for those of you looking for a lightweight VPN solution for a desktop, we offer that. We offer L2TP over IPsec, which works with most of your mobile devices out there. An easy VPN button for making VPN setup really simple. For those devices that offer UTM, we have antivirus, content filtering. We have this layer 7 application intelligence. This allows you to make firewall rules very simply because we've got a database of applications and features in those applications. So it makes it really easy for you to configure things such as blocking certain applications or providing QoS to certain functions of certain applications. Geo enforcer functionality. On the ATP series, we offer sandbox and machine learning, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Botnet and malware blocker, intrusion prevention, a reputation filter. So that's basically matches up IP addresses in real time and lets us know basically if this is an IP address that's been used for attacks recently to then block it. Most of our devices feature an integrated Wi-Fi controller. So again, if you'd like to manage your access points locally rather than through the cloud or directly, most of our security appliances do have a built-in Wi-Fi controller. Out of the box, they'll support a certain number of access points, and most of them will then let you unlock additional access points with a one-time license. There's also a hotspot management functionality that you can unlock with a one-time license as well. And some more products or some more features here, link aggregation groups. High availability pro. This is something that used to require a license. It's now free. Basically, so you can have dual gateways that are kept in sync with each other. So if one of them goes down for any reason, the other one instantly takes over. SSL packet inspection and Radius and Active Directory integration. You know, it's a lot of features. I was going through them fast there. Again, we're just trying to get you an overview of some of the stuff we have. So something else that's kind of cool that we do here is we have support here for a, what do we call it here? What do we call it? A private cloud, I think is what we're calling it, private cloud security. Basically, more and more features and functions are getting offloaded from a user's own servers into a cloud-based server, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure. So what we have is we have a certified solution that basically creates a VPN tunnel from your gateway to the cloud infrastructure, so that these services that are hosted in the cloud can appear as local services on the local network. So we've got three main lines of products. We have one fourth line that's going away, being replaced by the USG Flex here. So we've got the VPN series products for those of you that don't need UTM services. If you're just looking for a high-powered security gateway that provides basic firewall functionality and lots of VPN tunnels, this is the way to go. This is also the way to go if you're looking to providing Sd-Wan services. You would use the VPN series. Our most popular lineup is going to be here at the USG Flex series. So these give you the option of providing UTM services. These give you the option of being managed in the cloud. And then if you're looking for maximum security, we have the ATP series, the Advanced Threat Protection series. So we'll go through these a little bit here. So here's a quick little comparison chart here. You can see all of them offer some level of VPN functionality. They offer the certified functionality with Amazon VPC and with Microsoft Azure, built-in wireless LAN controllers, content filtering. Hotspot management is not something that you can do on the ATP series. It's focused on security, not providing those sort of extra features. All of them will work with our SecuReporter reporting software, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And then you can see here, as we go in here, we start unlocking some more stuff. This is where we get to our UTM services, malware blockers, intrusion detection. As you can see, it requires either the USG Flex or the ATP series. And then the ATP series provides sandboxing, IP reputation filters, DNS reputation filters, etc. So in general, when we're talking about these different products, I'm not going to go through each model. For the most part, the functionality is the same regardless of which model you're looking at. The primary differences are going to be the configuration of physical ports. So how many WAN ports do you need versus how many LAN ports do you need? Do you need a fiber uplink? And then also just how much horsepower the device has. So how fast is that VPN tunnel? How many VPN tunnels can it support? That sort of thing. So you can see here, VPN series includes that wireless controller. It does have the ability to do content filtering. It can be upgraded and turned into an SD-WAN device, and it does offer device high availability. Going up to the USG Flex, performance is focused here, and the chip performance is focused on providing UTM services. So providing that higher level of security for you. And again, it has the wireless controller. Gives you the ability to be managed with Nebula starting next week and provides device high availability. And then on the ATP series here, we start adding those extra features like sandboxing, URL threat filters. So let's talk briefly about SD-WAN. So SD-WAN is basically allowing you to do some tricks when you control both sides of an internet connection. So historically, big companies who want to link their locations together would do so by paying the telephone company for an MPLS connection, which are really expensive, not that fast, but they're highly reliable and they're very secure. People had hoped to replace those with standard VPN connections, but unfortunately, the VPN connections using the public internet just aren't reliable enough. There's too many issues with, bad routes coming through, performance, things like that. So SD-WAN basically allows us to use VPN type technology over a public internet connection and get ridiculously high performance over that SD-WAN or over that VPN connection, to the point where you can run voice services over the VPN without any issues. So it saves companies who are currently using an expensive MPLS, allows them to use a much cheaper standard internet connection instead. So this is just showing here how this would be set up. We use the Nebula orchestrator here to link these different sites together. And because we control the WAN connection at each of these sites, we're able to do some interesting tricks. We can optimize the TCP acceleration. There's tricks we can do to mitigate latency. We can make changes to how the tunnels are set up to optimize it for packet loss situations. So at the end of the day, it gets you a lot faster, a lot more reliable connection than just standard VPN does. So this is showing here in this situation, we've got our headquarters here in Taiwan. We have our German office here. So the connection information, there's about a 290 millisecond ping time between these locations, 0.3% packet loss, 3 millisecond jitter. So you can see here, using a standard VPN to transfer a 1.9 gig file, it took 2 hours and 40 minutes. Using Sd-Wan over the same connection here, it took us just 10 minutes, dramatically increasing the amount of time because we control all the different ends and we're able to use these little tricks to keep TCP from slowing things down and allowing us to maximize that throughput. I'm not sure why I've got this in here. I thought I'd blank that out. I'm sorry. This is our USG series. So this is still around. This is being replaced with the USG Flex. So as these go away, the USG Flex is the replacement, but we do still have several of these older models around, probably for the next few months for those that need them. I apologize. We're sort of repeating ourselves here on these different devices. So it's just showing here the UTM series. The USG Flex series here can give you up to a 500% increase in UTM performance. So that's the main thing here is the differences between the original USG and the USG Flex is just much better performance, particularly when it comes to UTM performance. You can see this is the USG 40, the new USG Flex 100, pretty significant increase in UTM performance. Same thing down the road, USG 60 to USG Flex 200, etc. So here is the ATP series. So this is what I was talking about before that offers sandboxing. So let's go a little bit more in depth on that. So first we'll start talking about conventional UTM services and how they work. So with conventional UTM, it relies on signatures that are updated once a week, once a month, depending on what's going on, sometimes once a day, although that's not very common. But basically, a threat goes out onto the internet. Third-party companies analyze that stuff, find out new threats, create a signature, release those signatures, and push those out. So it's really good for identifying known bad threats and things like that, when it's known good. It's really bad on what we would call a zero-day exploit. New attacks that have just recently come out, new types of traffic that are just now coming out onto the web. There we go. So the way we deal with this with the ATP is we take these unknown traffic that we don't know if it's good or bad. We're able to take that and offload it into the cloud. And the cloud has the ability here basically to use artificial intelligence to take these packets, run it through a bunch of simulations and figure out, is this new packets, is this new traffic behavior we're seeing, is this dangerous or not? And by running it through all these different iterations, we can quickly determine if this is good or bad, and then instantly push that out to all of the ATP devices pretty much as soon as we know. So it helps get you much faster reaction times to these zero-day threats. So this is just showing you here, some new zip file comes through. We don't know if it's good or bad. We can stick it up in the cloud. So we've sandboxed it. We don't let it through onto your network. We send it up to the cloud and run it through emulation and watch what it does to see if it's good or bad. If we can see in these simulations that it's something bad, we can then flag it and automatically push that out to all the ATP devices. So as you get more and more ATP devices deployed, the quicker and faster we're able to react to unknown types of traffic, unknown threats, things like that. This is just showing that all of the ATP models are linked through this cloud so they can keep educating something. So if something comes out in Spain, for instance, and takes a while to migrate to the US, we'll be able to see it and be able to push those signatures out. So when it does reach the US, it'll already have been identified and classified. So this cloud-based artificial intelligence and sandboxing is powered by a company known as Lastline. They're a pretty big player in this space. So now we'll talk a little bit about SecuReporter. So you've deployed all of these security gateways. How do you see what's going on? This is often a big problem when it comes to renewing UTM services, right? You go to your customer and say, hey, that license is expired. You need to pay us $600 for another year of your UTM services. And they go, well, why do I want to do that? So by being able to see what the gateways are doing, by being able to generate reports telling you what's going on, you can share those with your customers and go, look, this is what's happened. We've blocked this many virus attacks. We blocked a hacking attack. Our content filtering has stopped employees from looking at websites they shouldn't be looking at. That's why you need to renew these UTM services. So basically, SecuReporter is something that we offer here. It works with all of our security firewall appliances. So it's going to take your log data from your stuff, application data, security data, upload that to the cloud, run through some analytics, giving us some time normalization, allowing us to create visualizations, and then allow you to view it here in the SecuReporter interface. So you simply log into SecuReporter, all of your customers are there, and it's going to break down what's been going on in a nice visual manner. It'll tell you what kind of threat's been seen, who was targeted, when it happened, who the attacker was if we can, where the attack came from. It also allows you to highlight users that keep popping in and trying to visit, say, bad sites or causing some sort of issues. So we'll be able to analyze and say, hey, wait a minute, Bob in accounting for some reason seems to be running into an inordinate amount of attacks. I wonder what Bob's doing. And Secu Manager works with all of your customers. So much like Nebula, you log in, all of your customers are right there making it. We have the ability to set up customized alerts for when you see certain behaviors so you know. You get custom analytics for each of your customers. And we have the ability here to customize the reports, and you can send these reports to your customer. You can add your logo and information to these reports. So they're always reminded that it's you that's managing their network and keeping them protected. So that's it for SecuReporter. Now we'll start talking about switches. So we're done with security. We're done with Nebula. Now on to switches. Short version of switches is we've got an awful lot of switches out there that are available for you. And rather than go through each one of the different switches, I want to talk a little bit here about how you can tell what a switch is doing by looking at the model name. We're very good when it comes to switches with naming them in such a way that if you understand what the name is, you can tell what that switch offers. So most of our switches are going to start with a prefix here. So if it starts with ES, it tells you all of the ports are 100 megabit ports. We don't offer a lot of these anymore in the US. GS, if it starts with GS, it's telling you that that switch offers 1 gig ports on all of the ports. If it starts with XS, it's telling you all of the ports are multi-gig ports up to 10 gigabits. Some of them may be only 2.5 or 5, depends on the model, but it's letting you know that you're getting above that 1 gig. If it's XGS, it's telling you most of the ports are 1 gig, but you do have 10 gig uplink ports. It's really here in North America, but there's also an MGS series, which is our metro switches aimed primarily at like telco providers. And then if you look at the end of the switch, we will have a suffix on there. If it ends with P or PoE or HP, it's telling you it provides PoE power. HP is telling you that it provides at least PoE plus power, 30 watts per port. If it ends with an F, it's telling you all of the ports on that switch are fiber ports. There are no copper ports on the switch. Many of our switches have what we call combo ports. So it gives you 2 physical interfaces for the same port. We only count that once. So in this case here, you can see there's 8 major regular ports, and then there's 2 combo ports. So you would see that as a -10 if you're looking at the price sheet, letting you know that there's 10 total ports. that you can use, even though if you looked and counted the interfaces, there's actually 12 interfaces. And that's because these combo ports give you the option of using them either as copper or as a fiber. So you can use one or the other on each of those ports. When you're looking at the switches, SFP is what's used by fiber connections that are 1 gig. If you have a switch that supports 10 gig ports, then you need to use an SFP plus module to do the fiber connection there. So again, you've got a little empty DIN here, and then you buy the SFP or SFP plus module based on what type of fiber you're running, the distances you need to go, and then you pop that in. So if you're doing stacking, we have actual true physical stacking of some of our switches there, and that's done through a 10 gig port. We have a special cable called a direct attached cable that we sell that you then use to connect these switches together to do a physical stacking. Most of our switches offer some form of virtual stacking, and if you're using the Nebula cloud, all of them are basically virtually stacked. So on PoE comes in 3 flavors. The original PoE offers up to 15.4 watts per port. PoE Plus, which is what most of our switches provide, provides up to 30 watts of power per port, also known as 802.3 AT. And then fairly recently, there's a new one called 802.3 BT, which can provide up to 60 watts of power per port. And we do have a few switches that provide this functionality. We'll also soon have a PoE injector that provides that. 60 watts of power is required by some of the new super fast Wi-Fi 6 access points, not all of them, but some of them. And you also run into this a lot on some of the higher end IP cameras, particularly those that have really fast pan tilt zoom functionality. So the next thing you'll notice when you're looking at the model numbers is our switches are broken up into these different classes. So if you're looking for an unmanaged switch, you're looking at the 100 series, the 1000 series, the 1100 series, and the 1300 series. If you're looking for just sort of a web interface with some very basic functionality, such as VLAN tagging, we have our 1200 and 1900 series. If you're looking for web management and you're looking for much more robust functionality of the options, we have the 1350 series, the 1920 series, and the 1930 series. And then if you are looking for full layer 2 or layer 2 plus or layer 3 switches, that would be our 2210, 2220 series, 3700, 38, and 4600 series. This is just showing on the Nebula side of things. If you want to use Nebula management, it would be our 1350, 1920, 1930 series of switches, or the 2220 and 3800 series. These are the ones that support Nebula through Nebula Flex. So this is just showing you a quick breakdown of the different switches that we offer here. This XGS 1250-12 should now be available through most channels. So this is just showing this is a very basic web management. Going up there from the 1900 gets you, for the most part, rack mountable switches, a little bit more functionality in what you can do through the GUI. Our most popular series here is the 1920. Again, most models are designed to be rack mounted. These can be managed through Nebula. We've beefed up the surge protection, and we give you almost basically all the full layer 2 features you would expect to find. So this tends to be our best selling switch. XGS 1930, very similar to the 1920s, only we are offering 10 gig uplink ports. And the XS series, all of the ports are 10 gig ports. Then we've got our 2200 series. So we have the 2210s. Those are being phased out and replaced with the 2220s. The new 2220s can be managed with Nebula. And again, these are full layer 2. These ones offer both a command line interface, web management, or cloud management. And then if you need 10 gig ports, we have the XGS 2210 series. So these offer 10 gig uplinks. The NSW here 200, these are going away. These were our Nebula only switches. So those are being phased out in place of these Nebula Flex switches. So this is if you need you need layer 2 and you need a little what we call layer 3 light. That would be our XGS 3700 series, and again 10 gig uplink ports. Physical stacking is supported through DAC cables up to 1,000 watts PoE budget. XS 3800 series, so all of these ports are multi-gig ports. This is also just like the previous series, layer 2 and layer 3 light. Physical stacking possible with the DAC cables. And then our 4600 series here is our big beefy high-end guy for full layer 3 switching for those of you guys that need that. So this would be your like core switch. So on the PoE side of things, most of our switches, I think everything 1900 series and higher, or maybe 1350 series and higher, offers intelligent PoE management. And instead, this is sort of basically instead of using the classification method, which is the standard defined method of how PoE works, we can instead turn the switch into this intelligent mode where it monitors the power draw for each port and then allocates power based on the actual real demand. So here's an example of it here. This little IP phone is a class 3 device. So it's going to require 15.4 watts using the standard method of allocating power. However, when you put it into consumption mode here, this intelligent analyst mode, we can see that this device actually only needs 9 watts of power per device. So we can go ahead and free up almost 6 watts of power to apply towards other devices. So you can fit more devices onto this switch. So in this case, you can see here that if we use the classification method, 24 of these phones would require 370 watts of power. Where in consumption mode, they only really need 216 watts. You can use a lower price switch with a lower power budget to power the same number of devices. Same sort of story here, only this time we're using a IP camera with pan tilt zoom. It is a class 4 device, so it would require 30 watts of power per port. However, using smart monitoring, we can see it only needs 16 watts of power. So instead of needing 600 watts to power 20 of these cameras, we only need 320 watts in the real world. So again, you can use a cheaper switch, or you can use plug in more devices on the switch you already have when using this consumption mode. Now, there's one line of switches here I want to talk a little bit about because they are a little bit different than everything else that's out there. These are switches that were designed specifically for use in IP camera deployments. So they've got some extra little features that are kind of interesting. Even if you're not doing IP cameras, some of these features may be of interest to you. These can all be managed either directly through a web interface, through a command line interface, or through the Nebula cloud. This guy here offers BT support, so it can provide 60 watts of power on one port. So if you've got one of those cameras that needs extra power or a Ethernet or a faster access point, you can do that. So one of the cool things we've done on this series of switches is we have the ability to provide data and PoE for up to 250 meters. A standard switch can only go up to 100 meters before it drops out. Now, the trade-off is we do drop the speed to 10 megabits per second, but for a lot of devices, that's plenty of speed for them. And it's much better to have that 250 meter run of cable rather than it is having to try to get faster speeds, but have to put in more infrastructure to be able to get to those devices. So that's something that's really handy. Another cool feature here is continuous PoE. Updating firmware, making configuration changes, rebooting the switch will keep providing power to the connected device. So the connected device itself, it will lose connectivity, obviously, while the switch is rebooting or being updated the firmware, but the connected device won't reboot. So once that switch comes back online, it will instantly be able to resume. We also have the ability to show you the status of connected devices. Again, it was designed for cameras, but it can work with other connected devices. It'll show you the speed of the connection. It will show you whether the connection is up or not, PoE power draw, if any, as well as the IP address of the connected device. We also have an auto recovery mechanism that's built in here. It can use standard ping, or if you're using cameras, it can use LLDP to monitor the uptime of the connected device. If the device goes offline, it will automatically power cycle that device to reboot it by turning PoE off and on. So you can see here, you can define how often to check if the device is up and how many times in a row it needs to fail before you power cycle it. You also get to define how long it takes for that device to power back up, so you don't run into a situation where it's not responding because it's still booting and it constantly gets power cycled. And this, like the 1920s and 2220s, we've beefed up the surge protection built into them. So that's it for the switches. We do have some accessories that are available through Zyxel that you can buy. So we do sell SFP modules, 1 gig modules. We sell 10 gig SFP modules. We also sell these DAC 10 gig cables for doing the direct connect when you're doing stacking. So that's it for switches. We're going to move on now to wireless access points. Maybe, there we go. I always forget which slides have a bunch of animation on them. So we've basically got 2 key series of products is how we're defining it these days. We have the sort of entry-level products that are designed to compete with a Ubiquiti, with a Netgear, something like that. Most of these products now these days all support Nebula Flex, so you can manage them directly, or you can manage them through the free Nebula cloud. And that would be our 1X series and 2X series. So that would be something like the NWA 110AX, NWA 1123AC, etc. And then on the higher end of things, this is going to cover those devices which are Nebula Flex Pro. So those can also be managed with a wireless controller, as well as being managed in the cloud, and they do come bundled with 1 year of Nebula service. So that would be the 5X and 6X series. So that'd be like an NWA 5123 ACHD, a WAC 650S, etc. So when we're talking about our access points, doesn't matter if we're talking about our $89 NWA 1123 AC or if we're talking about a $650 WAC 650S. All of them are designed for reliability and performance in a way that most of our competition, including our much more expensive competition, does not do it. So these are solid state devices. There's 2 main areas that are going to cause failure over time. First one is capacitor failure. If you're using electrolytic capacitors, those have a tendency to dry up, leak, or boil over. So we only use solid state capacitors on all of our products, even our cheap ones. The other major cause of failure on a wireless device is heat fatigue over time. You get heat buildup in there. It can cause solder joints to fail. It can cause the actual ICs themselves, sometimes the switches to fail. So what we have in all of our products is a big giant metal heat shield behind the PCBA and a ton of vent holes in the back of the plastic here. So the heat is drawn off the board into this large heat sink and then vented out the top. If you look at some of our competitors on the lower end of things, not only do they not have any sort of heat sink, they have no vent holes. So that's why even on our $89 access point, we can offer a lifetime warranty where our competitors are only offering a 1 year warranty because our hardware is designed to last. Even if you compare us with something like a Ruckus or a Meraki, hold theirs and hold our equivalent AP, you will feel how much heavier ours is, in part because of that heat sink, also because we put more shielding on the PCBA than most of our competitors do, to just give us just that much little bit better separation between the wireless signal and any sort of EMI that might be coming off the board. You will also see another metal plate that goes above the board, and that is what our antennas are mounted to. We do not mount the antennas directly to the PCBA like most of our competitors do. By removing it off the PCBA and putting a shield behind it, we again are optimizing for just a little bit better RF separation between what's going on the board, a little bit better receive sensitivity. So not something that's going to make a big difference if you're, really close to the AP, but those edge cases, several rooms down from where the AP is, or out in the warehouse, several aisles down, this will allow you to have a slow but reliable connection where if we didn't design it this way, you would have no connection or a very poorly behaving connection. So we've got a bit of technology that's available in some of our APs that you might not be familiar with. It's something we call dual optimized antenna. Now, most of the access points that are out there are designed to be mounted on a ceiling central to the area to be covered. So because of this, the antenna pattern sends out the signal and is designed to cover in a nice sort of round coverage area. The problem is out in the real world, you often can't mount an access point centrally on the ceiling. You end up having to mount it on a wall. So the antenna pattern is less than ideal for that wall coverage, sending a bunch of the signal up into the ceiling and down into the floor. So with dual optimized antenna access points, we have two sets of antenna patterns, one for ceiling mount, one for wall mount, and we allow you to easily switch between those, either with a physical switch or with a software switch in the GUI. So no matter where you mount the AP, you can have the correct antenna pattern for coverage based on that. The other bit of technology we have is smart antenna. So if you're already selling or familiar with Ruckus, you're familiar with smart antenna. Us and Ruckus are pretty much the only two guys using smart antenna technology. Because it gets confused sometimes, beamforming, something that was introduced with 11AC, is completely different than smart antenna. Don't get those two technologies confused. So when it comes to Wi-Fi, quality of experience is key, especially if you're providing hospitality or guest access to it, or if you're trying to provide coverage out in your warehouse. You know how frustrating it can be when your Wi-Fi is unreliable. Generally out there, one of the biggest causes of poor performance is what's called co-channel interference. When it comes to using Wi-Fi technology, only one device can transmit at a time, with a couple of exceptions here, but for the most part, only one device gets to transmit at a time. If two or more devices transmit at the same time, it causes interference. And a big cause of the problem here is the limited amount of RF spectrum that's available, which means you can get interference from access points using the same channel clear on the other side of the building, as well as it can be caused by other wireless devices using the same channels. It can be caused, especially in commercial buildings, by commercial industrial equipment. A lot of it puts off RF interference. So as we mentioned before, most access points are designed with this nice round coverage pattern. The problem we run into is you introduce a source of RF noise, it overlaps with that coverage pattern, causing interference. Now, even though this interference may not make it over here, it makes it far enough to the access point. So the access point hears this noise at the same time it's trying to hear this device and causes packets to be dropped. Smart antenna, on the other hand, has the ability to go through literally hundreds of different antenna patterns in near real time and choose an optimal antenna pattern for each client device that takes into account both where that device is in relation to the access point, so the access point can focus its beam to get further coverage and a stronger signal to that client, but also allows it to ignore the co-channel interference so it doesn't suffer from the interference, whether it's a microwave like in this example or another access point or another piece of industrial equipment. It makes a huge difference in hotel deployments, classrooms, um, business centers, conference centers, things like that, where you've got a lot of devices operating at the same time. It makes huge differences. And we go into a lot more detail on my Wi-Fi 101 presentations. So if you're interested in that, join our Wi-Fi 101. We'll go a little bit more in depth into it. So here we've got an example. They're comparing us to a similarly spec'd Aruba. Aruba doesn't offer smart antenna. So in both of these cases here, we are dealing with 4x4 Wi-Fi 6 coverage. And you can see we are green, Aruba is blue, and you can see the difference in performance between the two. Now, a few years back, there was a third-party company, or not company, third-party university group. Their networking group got together, saw the claims people like us and Ruckus made about smart antenna, and decided to go out and cover it. So you can see the white paper they put together where they outline all of the tests, all the different performance results. You can still download it here from this link. We also, if you look on our website, we have a sort of summarized white paper where we just 1 or 2 pages that highlights the key findings from what they came up with. But basically what they came up with is up to a 70% performance coverage in real world environments where there's co-channel interference. Comparing us to Cisco, 56% better performance, and even better performance than Ruckus's smart antenna technology, because we use a little bit different smart antenna technology, specifically when it came to the co-channel interference, which is something you would experience in the real world. In a clean environment where it's just the client device and the access point, no other sources of interference, performance is basically equal. So I do want to talk really briefly here about Wi-Fi 6. So you've probably been hearing a lot about Wi-Fi 6. It's the newest, latest Wi-Fi technology. Basically, it's a lot faster. Theoretically, you can get up to 10 gig connections. We highly recommend for our faster Wi-Fi 6 access points that you use a 5 gig Ethernet connection. Your Ethernet connection doesn't become the bottleneck for the wireless connection. I know it's kind of scary that wireless is now legit faster than your standard gigabit wired connection. It's designed to allow you to put more devices into the same area before they cause interference. And this is the first new Wi-Fi technology that boosts the 2.4 radio with all the new features. If you are running 11 AC access points, that 2.4 radio is still using ancient 11N technology. So some of the cool features here we get with Wi-Fi 6 include the ability here to do up to 8 different MU-MIMOs, the ability to do both upstream and downstream MU-MIMO. So before with 11 AC Wave 2, you could send data to 2 different or 3 different devices, depending on the radio configuration, at the same time, but you still only one device could send data back to the access point. You can now have multiple devices sending data back to your access point at the same time. OFDMA for much, much better utilization of the RF spectrum, much better interference avoidance. It's fantastic. Able to split up your resource units into smaller chunks, so you're more efficiently using your airtime. Higher modulation, so you're cramming more data into the same area. Something cool called BSS frame coloring, which basically allows the data to have a little tag that says, hey, this is who this data is for. So an access point can look at that and go, oh, I don't need to listen to this. This is for that other access point one room over. This isn't for me. So again, allowing you to have more devices transmitting at the same time without interfering with each other. Much more efficient use of airtime and how long a device waits. So you can now tell the device when it's its turn to transmit instead of having it try to guess. So it's really cool technology. Now there's a couple things I want to draw your attention to when it comes to Wi-Fi 6. Some vendors who've just recently launched some Wi-Fi 6 product are only putting the Wi-Fi 6 technology on the 5 gigahertz radio. Their 2.4 radio is still using 11N technology. So that's something you've got to keep an eye on, is you've got to make sure Wi-Fi 6 is on both radios. Another big problem we have in the industry right now is we have people out there calling their products Wi-Fi 6, which don't feature all of these features we were talking about. They may not support OFDMA. They may not support upstream MU-MIMO. They may not support BSS coloring. These are mandatory requirements for Wi-Fi 6. However, there is no enforcement body. So that's something you need to do when you're looking there. You may see a product saying, hey, I'm Wi-Fi 6, but you need to check that data sheet and see if they have all of these technologies that are key parts of making Wi-Fi 6 different than 11 AC Wave 2, if they actually have them all or not. So it's really frustrating because there is no enforcement of who's calling their products Wi-Fi 6. There is the Wi-Fi org. They do provide Wi-Fi 6 certification, but you don't have to be certified to call your product Wi-Fi 6. So just in case there's any questions, when it comes to Zyxel products, all of our Wi-Fi 6 products have Wi-Fi 6 on both radios, and all of them support the true full feature set that is mandatory for 802.11ax/Wi-Fi 6. Okay, moving on from Wi-Fi 6, let's talk briefly here about wireless LAN controllers. Our wireless LAN controllers, the dedicated NXC series, those are going away. However, as we talked about earlier, most of our security appliances provide a wireless LAN controller built into them. So you can have a one box instead of a two box solution. So for those of you that don't want to use the cloud, this is another great tool here. If you are using you're not a cloud person, but you are using our USG or our VPN series security gateways, you can use that existing hardware to manage your access points. So this works with any of our 5 series and higher access points. Gives you zero AP config deployment. Basically, the AP will see that there is a controller on the network and automatically switch itself into controller mode. The controller can help us with dynamic channel selection. We have a Zymesh feature. So if you can't get Ethernet to all of your APs, you can have them linked as a mesh backhaul, and some of the fast roaming and stuff like that. Rogue AP detection and isolation. It gives you the ability here to do edge-based security and coordinate that with the firewall. The ability to do dynamic VLAN assignments based on radius server and doing some really heavy-duty advanced AP load balancing. So this is just showing here the different models. You can see here VPN 50 supports 4 APs out of the box, can be upgraded up to 36. Down here, the ATP 800 comes with 8 APs out of the box and can be upgraded up to 520 APs to be managed. And with that, guys, we conclude today's webinar. I know it was long. I know I went over a lot of dry stuff and I went through it really fast. If you have questions, send them in now with the question and answer box. While I wait to see if anyone has any questions, my email's up there on the screen, Sean R, SHAWNR at Zyxel.com. Feel free to reach out to me offline. If you have any questions on stuff, feel free to, if you have feedback on today's webinar, things you like, things you didn't like. We are always looking for new suggestions and ideas for webinars that would be beneficial to you and your employees. So if you have any ideas for some sort of additional type of presentation, that would be a great place to send it to. Email me, let me know. And of course, you can always reach out to your salesperson, Jacob or David, and they can help you out with stuff. So Ruben was asking about downloading this presentation. Yeah, reach out to your salesperson. Jacob or David can get a copy of this and send it to you in PDF. This is also being recorded and I believe will be uploaded to our YouTube. So on YouTube, the channel for us is Zyxel Channel America. And past versions of this are already up there for you to take a look at. So Jack has a good question here. Jack is asking, does Nebula provide the same features for controlling APs than the local boxes? So for the most part, the functionality is mostly the same. It's in the details where things are a little bit different. So Nebula does provide mesh networking on the APs, but it is a slightly different implementation than what you would get with the controller. What the controller generally does better is it handles load balancing and fast roaming better when you've got a very large number of access points. So basically things like fast roaming and things like load balancing, when you have a dedicated wireless LAN controller, the AP updates its information and sends it to the controller, and the controller then coordinates everything. When you're using the Nebula cloud, the APs are talking to each other and having to coordinate with each other. So more data is sent because instead of each AP having to send data to one controller, each AP has to send that data to every other AP that happens to be on that network. There are some tricks we can do in the cloud with Nebula, such as we can create load balancing groups where we only group the APs together that are in the same general area that would realistically need to be load balancing with each other. So that reduces the traffic and stuff. But if you do need to, for some reason, load balance, 64 APs across all 64, a controller is going to handle that better than the cloud is because it will use less overhead to do it. But for the most part, for most people, the main difference between Nebula and the local controller just has to do with their comfort when it comes to how they're managing their networks. If you're already managing your switches and gateway in the cloud, you might as well manage your APs in the cloud as well. Cloud management really started with APs. So it's where it came from originally, right? You know, you look back 10 years ago, it was basically Meraki APs, Aerohive APs, and that was it. And it's expanded to switches and gateways since then. But if you're already managing everything in the cloud, great, do it in the cloud. If you've already got, you know, Zyxel deployed, Zyxel VPN, and old USG, which cannot be managed with Nebula, you know, you may decide it's rather than use the Nebula cloud, it may just be easier to use that built-in AP controller on the gateway. It's up to you. But for most people, it's more of a convenience and what they're comfortable with than any sort of physical limitations or feature limitations of the different modes. So Jack's asking here, Nebula provides AP isolation and rogue. No, Nebula does not do rogue AP or the ability to isolate that AP, if that's what you're asking about. And honestly, those features here in the US are of dubious legality. The FCC has rules that basically say no RF device can intentionally interfere with another RF device. So rogue AP containment and isolation, if that's what you're referring to by isolation, is something the controller does, but it may not actually technically be legal to use it here in North America. Um, it is not offered in the cloud. Now, if you're talking about AP isolation, where you'd like to separate the APs and provide layer 2 isolation on those users, that is something that Nebula Cloud does do. So hopefully that answers those questions. And I don't have any more questions in here. So I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thank you guys for joining us. Again, feel free to reach out to me. If you're typing a question right now, go ahead and highlight it and transfer that over to an email. And again, my email is ShawnR, SHAWNR @Zyxel.com, or you can send it to your sales rep and they'll make sure to get it forwarded to me. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you guys turning it out today.